Hey y'all, welcome back to Breaking Skin, the podcast where women in tattooing share their career stories that usually stay in the studio. I'm your host, Kale Pearson, and this week we're going to be talking with someone that I've worked with very closely. Shared with the conventions, tattooed next door in a studio, and now we're pretty good friends. Her name is Sappy. It's Sappy Tattoo Online. What I really enjoyed about my conversation with Sappy was that she is originally self-taught, but now has had a really successful 9-year career. Originally doing handpoke, she's now doing machine, and has really transitioned to focusing on hand drawing a lot of her work, despite not having a formal art background. It's pretty incredible to watch in person, if I'm being honest. I think y'all are going to really enjoy this conversation with her, and you don't need to hear anything else from me. So this is Sappy. Well, thanks for hanging out with me and doing this interview. I know that I've heard parts about your story as a tattoo artist, but I think it's valuable for other people to hear too.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, I'll let you start and just let me know kind of how you got started in tattooing, what pushed you to start, and what that kind of looked like for you.
Cool. Yeah. I have a very non-traditional path. I am self-taught, and that started 9 years ago now. I get a little nervous sharing my story just because there are so many opinions about being self-taught, even though self-taught tattooers have existed for a long time. And even at this point in my career, like 9 years of learning, I'm still like, oh, I wish I had an apprenticeship sort of situation. Which is funny. I feel like a lot of self-taught people are like, go for it. You got it. Like, this is a legit route. And it is legit. But at this point in my career, I'm like, damn, I really wish I had an apprenticeship back then. But yeah, in 2016, I started out with hand poking. I had like given myself stick and pokes in middle school. Like it's always been on my mind. And I wanted to be a tattooer for forever since I was really little. And I kind of just felt like everything was like there were huge barriers, especially as a woman, to getting into tattooing. And so I just ordered needles and ink to hand poke at home and just started doing that on myself really for a long time. And then my friends started wanting them too. And so I just was like absorbing as much tattoo content as I could. Like, I think even Grace Neutral had like a Vice show on all different kinds of tattooing around the world and YouTube and all the things. And then started taking money for tattoos in like 2018, 2019, one of those years. And then it got to a point where I was like afraid to be tattooing at home because people wanted it. And one hand poke shop opened up in Austin, or that really allowed hand pokers. And I realized that I could kind of give it a go. I didn't need to move to a foreign country to be able to hand poke.
Yeah.
At first I was
That's
like, I'm going to have to move to Europe and then as the years went on, I found hand pokers like in the Bay Area. And I was like, okay, maybe I have to like move to the Bay Area. But then, yeah, the shop opened up in Austin, and I pretty much like as soon as I got that job, I was like full on, fully booked out, full time tattooing in a shop, and I've been there ever since. And that was
What year did
4 years
join
ago.
that? 4 years ago? Was it
Yeah.
Novin?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you think that there was probably hand poking going on, but maybe just because social media wasn't what it is right now, that we just didn't know about it?
Well, I mean, hand poking has been around forever.
I guess I mean in the way that people do it now in like shops and
Yeah. Oh, yeah, like modern. Probably. I think I wasn't the only one. I mean, I know now that I wasn't the only one hand poking out of my house. And I know of now one or two hand pokers that actually started in traditional shops in the Bay Area, but were here in traditional shops in spaces that I assumed would not allow hand poke. They were actually here, but it was only like one or two people. So it was happening. Yeah.
Yeah. What now you don't do hand poke so often. So what was that transition like deciding to do machine instead?
Yeah, I I have a lot of reverence for handpoke and the process and just slowing down and things being made by hand. Like I am a very analog person. I really cherish craft, which is what drew me to handpoke. But then I just got to a certain point in my handpoke career where I was like, I want to do big stuff. And also I am killing my tendons. Like my carpal tunnel was so bad because my handpoke technique is a little different. I feel like a lot of, I mean, there's a huge variety of styles within handpoke, but most common, I think, is more simple designs or more like grayscale, lighter shading. And I was doing thicker lines and larger pieces that a lot of people were like surprised that my tattoos were handpoke rather than machine. So you can imagine that my carpal tunnel was awful.
Yeah, it takes a long
Awful.
time, I would assume, to put together a big piece that was thick with him.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think I got to a point where I felt limited stylistically as well. I wanted my art to grow and I wanted to do larger pieces. So I switched to machine, which is very humbling, very humbling. I mean, I had a lot of understanding of like design and the body and the skin and the process, which I think really helped us not like starting from zero at all, but it is totally different. And so here it was very established just as hand poking all the time and feeling good, feeling a little bit bored, and then switched to machine and I was like, this is a humbling experience.
It's different. And you're
Yeah.
starting to reintroduce some hand poking with your machine work right now, right?
Yes, yes. So I mean I still offered hand poke, but I made some adjustments to my policies around it last year to kind of really reduce the amount that I was doing. I maybe did 2 or 3 hand pokes last year. Besides, like, I always hand poke finger tattoos and things like that. But this year, I reduced my rates for hand poke and I'm designing a little bit more to have specific designs that are offered for that option.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like
Yeah.
like you said, you had a big prior knowledge of like skin and how things like that work. And I feel like you do know a lot about skin and how like the specs of things or different materials or react this way and like even the ink.
Mhm.
It wasn't taught to you in apprenticeship. How did you learn all that or gain all that knowledge?
Interesting. Wow. Great question.
Yeah, because I was like, I feel like I ask you a lot whenever I am like, I don't know what this is or what's happening.
I feel like it's a few pieces. I think in regards to like technique and tattooing and different places of the body, with hand poke, it's slower and you see every individual like breaking of the skin, every insertion, every
Yeah.
poke. And so you really can tune into the behavior of different skin in different areas. You notice a lot more with every little thing that you do.
Hmm.
But yeah, I've always been interested in ingredients and how the body reacts to it. I have a tiny, tiny bit of a background in herbalism and just kind of like understanding how the immune system works, how different ingredients and anything that we use, interact with the skin. And yeah, I definitely, I have I come from a very hippie background, very, conscious people group who care about tattoos. And so a lot of my clients actually came to me because I used organic ink and pigment-based ink and things like that. And they were willing to be tattooed because those are the things that I offered. So kind of all of that is there. I don't
Goes
know.
together. I feel
It
like you
makes
could teach
sense.
a whole class on this.
In my brain, it's like such a web of random things coming together and like, having this intersection. And so I would probably have to really work on an
Take
outline for
time, but
that.
I think it's valuable because it's stuff that a lot
Yeah.
of people in a traditional space sometimes don't talk about, like
Yeah.
based inks versus other based inks. I feel like no one was like, here's a curriculum for how to do this or
Totally.
what it means.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because there's the side of tattooing where it's like I made my own ink. I like you know, harvest this specific plant and turn it into carbon and add the glycerin. And I like, that process. And then there's the other side, and I'm totally theorizing here, it's just my perception, but inks are, you used to have to make your own, and to get color pigments and all this stuff, you would put crazy shit in it, like shellfish or different stuff, you know? And so I would imagine at a certain point in modern tattooing, like, you know, in the late 1900s, even early 2000s, that it was kind of like, we don't want to tell you what's in this, you know?
How do you pick your inks now? Like, what do you look for when you're purchasing ink?
I use pigment-based ink, and I look for organic ink. I do. I also check for things like witch hazel, glycerin, you know, things like that, because those are going to inform the, like, witch hazel, some people can be sensitive to, and it can make the skin more red, and it'll inform kind of the flow of the ink as well. But I use organic inks, and there are a lot of people who make inks, and I actually buy local organic ink that's made in Austin.
I want to, what's the brand? How do people get it?
Shout out Sombras. Shout out Sombras. But yeah, they make organic inks here in Austin.
So cool. It's like a whole different world, and like a whole different side to tattooing is the science of it all, besides just there's a lot of parts and pieces to it. You said earlier that when you were growing up, you had always wanted to be a tattooer. What drew you to wanting that as a job for yourself?
It was a whole process, really. I think, I grew up in Austin, and they used to call Austin the Portland of Texas. Very eclectic and weird when I was younger. And so I was just surrounded by people, you know, with tattoos. Not in my immediate family at all. No one had tattoos, but it was just around, and I know this is a little more intimate note, but it felt like something that just was in me all along. Like, I don't know if it was a past life thing or what, but yeah, pretty young, I was like, I want to be a tattooer. And I always looked up to people with body art and people who did that sort of thing. And then in high school, I met the world a little bit more and realized that I can't do anything that I want to do, whether that's a false belief or not. And I also abandoned art. I was going through a lot at the time. I'd always been an artist since I was little. Yeah, there was just so much going on that I couldn't make art, stopped making art. You know, I was told that art's a good hobby, but not a career, you know? And also just the reality of what shops were like, you know, at 18, starting to go into shops and being like, this is actually gross, and y'all are assholes, and
uncomfortable.
You all seem miserable, you know, and learning what it is required to get an apprenticeship and all that. So I really abandoned it for a long time. And then there just was a certain point where I was like, fuck it.
Let's try to
do it. Yeah.
That's cool. In your perspective, seeing the shops in Austin or wherever, being a young woman, now being in the industry after almost a decade, what has it been like being a woman in tattooing?
Yeah, I feel really blessed and spoiled because my first shop, and the only shop I've been a resident at, is owned by a woman, and mostly, you know, women and queer tattooers in the space. And I did not have to have the experience of going into a male dominated shop and fighting tooth and nail to, you know, be respected. I think more of my negative experiences of being a woman in relation to the tattoo world is getting tattooed in other spaces. But I also think that I actually limit the world. I've made the world smaller as a female in this industry, because I do extensive research on shops before I guest there or even apply to guest places. I just have to be aware of male tattooers who have been called out in the industry. So there's more of a, psychological burden at this point of just having to know information about who and where before going there.
Yeah, having to put in a lot of legwork before going to a place to make sure you're going to be comfortable and safe, the minimum.
Yeah. And I mean, that's just existing in the world as a woman, you know, but I feel like there's not like, you know, a list where you can go and see like who's an unsafe tattooer, who is like violent towards women, or, you know, so you kind of just have to know by word of mouth. It's a very big like storytelling based industry, you know, in the artwork, but also between coworkers, between artists, and
yeah, it really is. You see people like get called out on little social media groups, but it's so easy, even in the modern internet world we live in, to move towns and change your username and start a new account and fly under the radar.
Yes, there are a few accounts that I feel like in 2022 we're taking on that role, and they were simply for putting people's really negative and traumatic experiences with specific tattooers. They would put that in a post, but I have not really seen a lot of those accounts lately. I don't know where they went. And I have seen people that, you know, are violent people here in town just move and pay for ads and, you know, like
Restart.
move on. Yeah. And I think, you know, we talk a lot about the ways that it's hard to find resources or find information on people, or, you know, there's no checks and balances in the industry. And I don't want the industry to be regulated. But I think that in true community, that wouldn't happen. And so I think that's why I'm so big on community as well, is because if those people actually had respect for each other and like were, you know, creating a goal of a shared common space and shared common practice and just community, that doesn't slide through the cracks, you know.
Definitely. Do you feel like there's a divide in Austin on an industry level between like our universe of like the queer friendly femme shops and the traditional shops?
You know, I think it's really easy to look at the internet and be like, man, everybody's just a bunch of haters and everybody's so divided and whatever. But whenever I go into a shop, I've never had a bad experience. Like as in relation to our shop and in people knowing who I am and what I'm doing, you know, my bad experiences were prior to that. Yeah, I definitely think and know there's a few places in town that they believe in that divide and they would probably uphold it and be assholes. But there are so many places in town that are not, and surprise me. And I think it is also Austin in regards to that. I mean, you moved here and you're like, oh my God, everybody's so friendly and authentic and real. It used to be more so, you know, so like there's that here at play. But I definitely I enter on guard. I mean, you do that as a woman anywhere. And I can think of one time, an owner of a shop, when I was hand poking, an owner of a shop hit me up of a bro shop and kind of an old head and said I can't even remember what he DM'd me. And I just flew off the handle sassy back, like just immediately on guard. And he was like, oh no, I actually think what you're doing is fucking cool. I just was curious. And I was like, oh, great. Like, here I am being a fucking day.
Because you get so protective of like your artwork and something that you really are passionate about. Yeah. And then when people say crazy stuff, it's just like, and I think a part of it, like where it feels like that to me, I feel like being in that traditional space, I feel like they know each other. It's like, oh, my friend here, like Sparks from this place and George from this place and whatever. But they go to the same conventions and like they do that kind of stuff. So it makes me like I want to go to all the conventions and meet all the people so that it can be a little bit better. But even in starting this podcast, I went to a shop and there was a woman who was like, I don't believe in what you're doing, essentially. So there can be a divide.
I mean, it's that's people too, you know, everywhere.
It'd be like that. Well, let's talk about your style, because you kind of are building something that isn't necessarily mainstream. It's certainly not traditional. You don't see it all the time. It's breaking new ground. What's it
Thanks.
been like kind of creating something that others aren't?
It's a lot of work. It's so much work. It's fun and I love the work, but if you're just doing American traditional, you go in, you learn the basics, how to pack color, how to space shapes appropriately so that they heal well, what to line with, lots of like just monolining. And this is kind of like, okay, what techniques do I need to use to achieve the healed work that I'm wanting to create?
Yeah.
And actually having to learn from so many different styles and then pulling specific techniques from those styles to try to combine it into what I'm trying to coin the phrase as is psychedelic ornamental.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pulling things from like sacred geometry tattooing, grayscale, lots of black work. I think a lot of my work leans black work. And then there's a big flowy element to my work as well. And so that's like pulling a lot of composition from Japanese tattooing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so much labor to put it all together. And it feels, it's more true to me. It's more unique. It long-term fuels me more.
Yeah.
But in the short term, it feels very isolating and it can feel, I don't know, scary at times because I don't have like a mentor to turn to or a specific like style to look into that holds like a couple of the answers that I need, but it's fun.
Yeah.
Worth it.
What originally like inspired this style, the psychedelic ornamental?
So I think I've always been very flowy. I'm a very visual person. I can see a lot of patterns everywhere. And I also love the look of black work. I love the look of sacred geometry and I love the look of ornamental, but I don't love everything about it. Like I haven't found a sacred geometry tattooer that I like their full sleeve and like how everything fits together,
Mm-hmm.
but there are so many elements that I really love. And I love patterning. It's this interesting intersection between like what's really organic, natural, flowing, like that's what our bodies are. That's what, is more earth based, but also the sacred geometry attitude of like, your mind blowing on all the math patterns and things that exist. But that just feels way too masculine for me to like go gung ho in this very linear mathematical pattern. So I'm kind of combining the two.
Just taking the bits that you like from the different styles and then crunching them all together.
Yeah.
What's been the biggest hurdle in creating this for yourself, for your clients?
I think the biggest hurdle is fitting large compositions together for me, and just in relation to the art, because I just was talking about it, the sacred geometry, there's like this certain layering and like breaking up that happens to have all these pieces fit together. And I don't like that. And the body is a really complicated cylinder that changes, diameter and angle everywhere. Creating a composition and fitting things together in relation to the body with nothing to kind of base off of or rework. Like a lot of people who are within their style and following that style and developing that style, there is so much to reinterpret. Reinterpret is a big one, or replicate compositionally, but the art's different. And so I'm kind of in this place of like, there's not really anything for me to reinterpret, and I'm still seeking out how to, find compositional inspiration.
Yeah, that makes sense. What advice would you give to someone who's also trying to create a style that hasn't been honed in on before?
It's kind of a metaphor for life too, but just like observe as much as you can. Like don't look at something and be like, that's not for me, or that's not my style, or I don't like that. Like really look at it and find technique, or find something you do like, or even if you don't like it, maybe it forms the direction you're not going, which is closer to the direction you are going. But don't write things off,
Yeah,
like
if you
work
don't like it,
stuff.
why don't you? What do you not like about it?
Yeah. Yeah. Keep your head up because shit's hard.
Yeah, it does sound exhausting. You're creating something that's different visually in an art style, but from what I know about you, you don't necessarily have like a formal art background, like formal art training. So what has it been like now being essentially a professional artist without having that?
Yeah, I didn't think that I was missing out on anything until I was trying to figure out more and more stuff and realizing that other people had the answer and the resources because they went to art school. And I was like, and so it's really difficult. I don't want to sit here and be like, my entire career is so challenging, but
I
I
mean, no,
love
it's
it and I
not
love what I'm
always easy.
doing. But it's not always easy. And so, especially getting started, and especially now when I run into wanting to do something new or trying something new, I think it just like puts in a little extra work. Cause, like, say, for example, someone wants a tiger. Hypothetically, someone in art school has been like, we did a tiger study. I know how to draw a tiger. And I'm like, well, I've never done a tiger study. So I guess I'm going to have to do my tiger study and then also do the tattoo, which that's forever the life of an artist. You're never going to have like drawn everything ever.
Mhm.
But I think also understanding materials and just what's available I to use and to create, because tattooing's not the only kind of art that I do. You know, understanding paper weights and textures and the different types of printing. If I wanted prints to be made, like reduction printing, screen printing, all this stuff, I have to learn about that and spend time learning about it.
Yeah. Would you ever
Yeah,
go do art classes or something like at the Contemporary?
totally. Yeah. But now, I do want to do art classes, but I'm also like, okay, I need to fuel my own personal art practice. So I'm leaning towards like clay and sculpture and things when I do find any sort of free time.
Yeah. You were talking about how we keep saying that your job is hard and everything is difficult. What is the easiest part of your job?
Making new flash, you know, making new flash, sitting down, figuring out what I'm inspired by and just drawing. I think a lot of the stuff that's hard is the large scale concepts that I'm working on. But if I'm just doing like a little folky flash or flowers or whatever, I love it. I love just sitting down and tracing things and using markers and pens.
Yeah. You do a
Yeah.
lot of your artwork pen to paper and then take it to
Yes.
the digital.
Yeah, I didn't always. I used to draw on the iPad. I mean, it was kind of in the very, very beginning, I was pen to paper. I did not have an iPad. I didn't even know what that was. I didn't know Procreate was a real thing. And I would get like not particle board, foam board, and
Mhm.
I would like tape my little drawings to it so people could come into my house and like pick stuff out. But um, then I started doing the iPad and I just was miserable. I hate it. My eyes would hurt so bad, and I would try all the different pen tips and the paper like feel screen protectors and things. And yeah, I just, it was not for me. And so last year I was like, I'm gonna only do pen to paper. I'm gonna start a physical flash book of only hand drawn stuff. And um I used the iPad for like concept sketching and finalizing the whole process 4 times last year, and everything else was hand drawn. Even customs were hand drawn. People love that too. They're like, "Oh my God, you made this with your hands," very different than a digital interaction. And my style totally changed and developed way faster, and I was happier. So I'm going to continue doing that. The thing that I love on the iPad is the symmetry tool, and I will use it to make my stencil. I am very proud that I figured out rotational symmetry on paper. I figured out how to do that. But I will make the stencils in Procreate because I want to resize, or because there's just so much black fill, I don't want to like print that much carbon on the transfer paper. So
That's fair. So tip would be try drawing more flash by hand.
and I think people, gravitate towards the iPad because they're like, it'll save me time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the case for me. You can edit into oblivion on the iPad. And so I would challenge anyone listening who is a tattooer to just, maybe take a week of doing only hand drawn and a week of doing on the iPad and see which takes longer.
Try it out. Time yourself.
Give it a go.
It'll be a fun experiment.
Yeah.
Another thing that you and I were talking about at the retreat when we were talking about burnout and how like old head tattooers, when you think about them, can be like grumpy guys. And you made a point that you thought your theory, we're talking about why we think that's happening, is because being a job as a tattooer is also being a job as a healer. And a lot of people didn't sign up for that. So let's talk about that. How did you come to that, or like what sparked that thought?
Yeah, I was doing a lot of research on the uses of tattooing in ancient times, and basically the same concept as acupuncture. People would tattoo over wounds in areas that were hurting, and also for spiritual reasons, spiritual healing, but a lot of physical healing. And thinking about that, there's the very common joke that tattoos are therapy, things like this. And it kind of led me to realize that I wouldn't say tattooing is inherently healing. I would say tattooing is inherently transformative. It's a process of transformation. And in all processes of transformation in life, we either find healing or we find harm. And those are the ripe places for that to happen, good or bad transformation, whatever. So you're literally transforming your person when you get tattooed. And I think that's been left out of the vulnerability conversation. There's a lot of conversation about the power dynamic between tattooer and client, but I think someone is coming to you for transformation and you are to facilitate that process of transformation. And so, we run into a lot of things where, and this is I feel like any body worker can say, even massage therapists, like sometimes you just hit certain parts of the body and it just comes out of them, the trauma dumping thing. But even if someone is silent the whole session, there's still transformation happening. And so I think a lot of people, to wrap it around to the burnout, a lot of people wanted to be tattooers because they like body art, or they just want to be an artist, and they're like unaware of or non-consenting to the fact that it's a transformative process. And so you do have to prepare for it kind of in the way that healers prepare, and have a relationship to it. It's like, sure, you could now, not old head, but now a lot of modern tattooers have a lot of boundaries around their practice in order to be able to continue to do it and have the mental and emotional load to be able, or capacity to be able to, like, so many boundaries. And I don't feel like there's any amount of boundaries that you could put in place that make the process not transformative.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's what they're trying to do. And then, but it will be, and inherently you're going to have some of that. Hopefully it's not exhaustion. Hopefully it's life-giving, that you're helping people transform. But on the other end of the spectrum, the old heads, they're like, I'm just here to do body art. Like, I'm just here to tattoo you, or maybe they did get into the practice wanting to connect with people, and then they're just like under these managers or under these, shop owners or shop environments where it's just like turn and burn. You're gonna become, if I had to work in that environment and just like kind of have no boundaries, deal with anybody and everybody, whatever they want all the time, I probably might become an asshole at a certain point.
Yeah.
Because I would be so burnt out and resentful of what I'm doing and resentful of people coming to me, looking to me for something that I did not like consent to offer. I mean, it's exhausting, you know? And so I don't want to be, you know, a newer tattooer that's like, fuck you guys for being tired, you know, fuck you guys for not having emotional capacity. I mean, it is their responsibility to understand what's going on and create boundaries and have a healthy practice. They should not be taking stuff out. But I have at least some compassion for the fact that they didn't sign up to be people who facilitate transformation.
Yeah.
They signed up to be artists, but you're working with people and you're working with their bodies. And so it's just inevitable.
It just takes it. It's like a slow breakdown almost, because it starts with like eye rolling and like, I don't want to do this, and then all of a sudden you're like, that energy is reflected in the appointment, and then the client's uncomfortable, and then whatever that energy is that you're now putting, however you look at it, like through their tattoo, through their blood, you're like putting that on them.
Yeah.
Have you ever been tattooing someone and then you like hit a certain point, like physically, like when you're tattooing them, you like touch a part of their body and it like triggers an emotional response?
Yes. And this is why I think it is so important to be trauma informed and consent based, because the body, I mean, we know more in modern science now that like your trauma is stored in your body and your nervous system is connected to everything and it's all there, you know. But I've had people go into full trauma responses. I mean, there's a much easier thing to handle is just hitting a certain point on the body and somebody crying.
Yeah.
You know, that's just take a breath, you know, we'll work through it. That's super common on the table. But I have also had people need like stop breathing, start shaking, like having more of a legit
reaction,
legit nervous system shutdown. Yeah. And that, you know, I imagine if you're not informed about what's going on is much more scary. And also you don't know how to handle the situation. I've even had, it was my mom, I was tattooing her one time and I hit a certain part on her body, on her arm, and she was like, do not touch that again. And I was like, Mom, I'm not done with this. Like, but she was like, don't fucking touch it. I was like, okay. It hurt her really bad. And then that spot on her arm looked like it had a blowout. And I knew I didn't go too deep. I didn't know what was going on. And other people saw it too, and they were kind of like, oh. But then it was gone a week later, and it wasn't blown out. And my mom looked it up, and it was actually a pressure point, an acupressure point for grief and loss. And she was going through a breakup at the time.
Weird. That's so interesting.
Yeah. I used to do acupuncture a lot too, but I would talk to them about different points on the body and like what's going on. I mean, I think there's, you know, whether you choose to like believe in pressure points like that or not, or even just trauma being stored in different parts of the body. I think it's so interesting. And I think understanding pressure points like that would make me more knowledgeable about different situations when things like this arise.
Make you a better artist in the end, for sure.
Yeah. Make me a safer space to be because I'm, knowledgeable and can approach the situation informed.
So would it be better to, like, say someone is experiencing something like grief and loss? Is it better to tattoo on that area to help the release, or is it better to avoid?
I don't know. Ancient cultures and Chinese medicine and lots of different body-based healing practices would say go to the spot. But I don't have an understanding of that enough to say anything, because I also know that there's times where it's like, okay, this spot is too intense right now, so I'm going to go over here because it's kind of a sister spot, you know, that will help, and we like build up to the main spot. I have no idea.
I feel like when I was being taught in tattooing, we're talking about responses of clients. If someone was going to pass out or said they were going to faint, I feel like I was taught how to handle that. Not
Mhm.
necessarily though if someone's having like a nervous system shutdown. So how
Yeah.
would you recommend like an artist respond if they do notice a client is having an emotional response in that way?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, I don't want to get in trouble because I'm not a social worker or a therapist or anything. So that's my disclaimer. I definitely recommend looking in Tamara Santibanez's book, Could This Be Magic? She has a really good breakdown of how to do that. But for me, I obviously stop tattooing and take my gloves off so that way I'm not contaminating anything, and I remain calm. And then I say, hey, I noticed that you're shaking and crying, and here's what I think. Or I start with, is there anything you need immediately? Because some people might know how to help themselves. If they don't and they have no idea what's going on, which I find more common, I recommend pausing, taking a minute, letting them know that you're there, being around, because trauma is an isolated nervous system. So being there. And then I move towards sugar, salt, and sparkling water or a soda. Things with bubbles activate the vagus nerve in our neck, and that can help. That's one of my hacks for long sessions anyway. But it's the same thing as fainting. It's the same thing as long sessions. Sugar, salt. It's best if you can have something that is both sugary and salty at the same time in one bite,
Mm-hmm.
but two different kinds of snack is okay. And then sparkling water, ice. If it's more like kind of going in an anxiety, panicky direction, cold water, an ice pack, things like that for them to either hold or ingest.
Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
think like getting air, like walking? I know when people are like about to pass out, they want to walk, like they want to go to the bathroom. It's like their
Uh-huh.
first response. And I've seen like
Yeah.
George when I worked at the other shop, this guy was like, I'm gonna get up. And he was like, do not get up. Because
No,
they'll just
no, no, no. Yeah.
So I'm like, do they walk or do they lay down?
You'll, for the most part, oftentimes people who are in this response will have already maybe not even checked in with you, but they've moved into a position.
Mm-hmm.
They've sat up, they've pulled their arm away, they crossed they've moved already. So the body is automatically doing kind of what it needs to do. So if that happens, I recommend letting them stay where they are for a while and giving them the snack and sparkling water first before seeing if they want to do anything else. But yeah, I do recommend them kind of coming back to a little bit of a normal regulated state before starting with maybe sit on the edge of the bed. Maybe do you want to step outside for a minute? But the whatever's happening in the body should stop or slow or dissipate a little bit first.
Yeah. Do you feel like this is something that happens to you regularly or like that you experience with clients regularly?
Not regularly. I think when it does happen, it's intense. And so it's more memorable. But I don't know. There's also a scale, there's like small things that can happen, like the displaced tension or just maybe they need a break and are having a moment that I'm not even aware of because they're not having a full body reaction. So
Yeah.
who knows?
That's true. I guess, yeah. I've only had it happen once, so it was like at the end, like it was like the final dot.
Mm,
So it was like, we're already
interesting.
done. You can, but it was like the tip of her tailbone. It's like a spine
Oh,
thing. And that little dot
oh,
was just like the end.
so interesting. Wow.
Yeah. So it makes me wonder. I don't do a lot of lower back tattoos, but if that is common with like hips for women.
Yeah, I've never tattooed someone in their lower back that has not had any sort of something, I will say.
Yeah. Maybe that's something that'd be like a good series for someone to do as a tattoo artist would be like acupuncture specific placement series.
People do it. There's
I
somebody.
feel like would be great for you. I feel like you'd be so good at this.
I don't what I definitely have a line of like, I understand that this is transformative, but I'm not here to be like some people offer Reiki while
Oh, I've seen
doing
that.
tattooing and
Hmm.
stuff, and that's cool. I'm not trying to open that door. I'm also not someone that like invites people to trauma dump or like sometimes I am with a lot of my regulars. I'm like, let's kiki, but I'm not off the bat like, tell me your life fucking story, So
Yeah.
I like to invite a more meditative experience.
More chill time.
So
You're like, I'm trying to invent a
yeah,
style right now, so I'm gonna focus on that.
but I also think like being fully present is cool, and also just with black fill and larger work, you really got to let people get their mind right. Sometimes people want to talk, and I'm like, all right, let's do it. But for the most part, I'm like, I'm gonna let you lead on what you
Yeah.
need.
I think that's
Yeah,
good. I find that when people aren't looking at you, that's when they talk the most. Like if they're laying on their back on the table and
totally.
it's just like they're talking to the ceiling.
Yeah, I more of my people are falling asleep. I feel like everybody's fallen asleep on me lately.
Always or
So
recently?
more recently, like in the past year, everyone who's kind of been turned away is falling asleep.
I had this one experience. It was my first day. Honestly, I think it was my first tattoo at No Good. And I was like, I hope this is not an omen. I don't know that I've told anyone at the shop about this. I was tattooing this girl. It was like above her elbow. It's this like color flower. And she was laying on her stomach. She's like fresh 18. First tattoo. So she's on her stomach and she's looking away from me and I can see her breathing kind of shaky. And I kept being
Yeah.
like, hey, are you okay? Like, we could take a break. I know. Like, we're walking through it. It wasn't a long one. And she kept being like, yeah, I'm good. And I was like, maybe she's just trying to breathe through it. And then she finally turns and looks at me and her face, she's been crying so much. The breathing was like sobbing. She's sobbing. And I was
Why
like,
didn't she say
what?
anything?
Whoa, dude. And I was like, I took my gloves off and I was like, it does not have to be like this. We
Take a minute, girl.
numbing spray, like we can stop. Like
Huh?
she's like, it just hurts so bad, is like
Oh
what she
my
keeps telling me.
God.
And I was like, I don't want you to have this kind of experience. This is not what
Yeah.
experience is like. I've never had this experience with someone else. I didn't tell her that. But I was like, it doesn't have to be like that, girl. Like, I'm not scary. We're in this together.
I feel like that's a big thing as a female tattooer is so many women and non-binary folks coming in and just not saying anything.
Yeah.
Like, yes, it really hurt. I like get really sad when I can see someone not saying what they need to say or asking for anything. I'm like, oh. But I think it's especially for you too. You make it so nonchalant. You're like, dude, what's up? Say what you need. Like, I think that's another piece of the transformative process. Like, come in and hopefully you're encouraged to use your voice and speak your needs.
Yeah, always be honest, especially with like design and placement and stuff. I live in fear. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if you're on Reddit. I'm on Tattoo Advice Reddit, which I originally thought was going to be tattoo artists seeking advice, but it's not. It's customers, clients seeking advice on their tattoos, usually current. A lot of times it's asking if this is infected or if I should go to the doctor.
Uh-huh.
But I live in fear. Sometimes it's just a picture of a tattoo and it's like, I don't like it and I regret it. And it's been years. And I live in fear one day my artwork is going to be on there or somebody I know and it's going to be like, why didn't you tell me? Why did we do this?
Yeah. I feel like a lot of times, I feel like it's 50-50. A lot of times it's just someone got it when they were young and they grew out of it. And then sometimes it is like they didn't say they didn't like it and they felt like they had to do it. And dude, autonomy. You are your own boss of that body right there. And you've been raised to think differently, but you have autonomy and you are your own boss.
You can do whatever you want. You can leave right now.
You can do whatever the hell you want. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have a tattoo that he didn't even start drawing till we got there, which was abnormal because I'd worked it with him before. But I ended up getting it because I'd already been there for so long, like waiting.
Wow, really?
I was like, yes. And also because he talked me out of the style I wanted. He talked me out of, I wanted like traditional, kind of spooky. And it ended up being like really cute and like not traditional.
I think it's hard too that people feel like they need to say something or explain it. And I'm like, if you feel like you can't say something and you're feeling too nervous, you can Irish goodbye.
Yeah, totally. Life. Not even at your tattoo appointment.
In life. I mean, please don't do that to me.
Yeah.
Let me know.
Yeah.
But in other situations, I don't know. I mean, if that's what it's going to take for you to do something to not do something you don't want to do because you need more practice in using your voice or you feel pressured in the situation or something, Irish goodbye.
Clients
Irish
apologize
goodbye.
a lot for like asking for what they want.
I know. Well, that's why I have made the sorry jar.
Oh, for
Not just be,
clients?
I made it for everybody. Maybe I should tell the people listening, but I made a jar in our shop where it's called the sorry jar, and you have to put money in it when you say sorry for no reason. And we've got a lot of money in there. I have made my clients do it. I make my clients do it when they're like, I'm sorry, can we? I'm sorry. No, put money in the sorry jar. Stop apologizing. Just ask for what you need. You know?
Order out of your car.
Yeah. Ante up. I know you got cash. This is a tattoo shop.
Somebody has coins rolling around somewhere. I put money in the sorry jar. It's a good idea. And then I
Yeah.
don't know what we're gonna do with the money. Maybe donate it.
I think we should donate it to domestic violence shelter.
That makes sense. Have you had clients throughout your career that are like you think about often, whether they still work with you or you just haven't seen them in years?
Yeah.
Like just stuck with
Yeah,
you?
definitely. Yeah. I I think back when I was hand poking, I mean, my clients are all very interesting and awesome people. Like they're all so cool and all so different. But I had this one client who was trans and so sweet and actually going to school, I forget what you call it, seminary,
Yeah.
maybe, to be a pastor. Yeah. They were a very ethereal being, and we had really awesome conversations. And they came back a couple of times, but they moved out of state somewhere far. And yeah, I think about our conversations a lot. They just were so interesting. And I love philosophy and things. And a lot of people in my chair, we get into that. So yeah, I think about them. You know, lots of like nature conservationists and nerds and through hikers. Like all these people have really interesting
You're
stories
like,
or
where are
perspectives on
they?
life or do hardcore stuff. I'm like, what are you doing now? Where
I
are
do
you?
wonder that. Where did
Yeah.
it go?
And why did you end up in my chair? You know?
I wonder that too. I'm like, how'd you find me?
Yeah. 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 But I also, there's also people that the clients I do connect with information about their life and stuff. Not everybody, but there's some of them that I get to know the sagas of their lives. And I'm always so curious. I'm like, how is your kid doing now? Did your kitten grow up? Did you ever find your dog? Like, you know,
Yeah. I
yeah,
think about that. I'm like, are they still with their partner?
yeah, that's a big one.
They
That's a big
graduating?
one.
Yeah,
Hmm.
over time, especially over 9 years, you really see people like go through breakups. I've seen a lot of friend breakups where I've done like tattoos on
Hmm.
both of them and they're not friends anymore for some reason. Or they came to the
Hmm.
first appointment, but they're not, why are they not at the second appointment?
Hmm.
So that's
Yeah.
fun.
I also schedule with people that I do large scale projects on. I schedule for them to come in at the 6 month mark.
Mhm.
And a lot of people just get busy with life or forget about it. And so I never see them again.
Mhm.
And I'm like, what are you doing?
How's that
Where are
tattoo
you
going?
at? What? Are you alive? Are you doing okay?
Yeah, I have had people, was with like no call, no show where it was like a substantial piece and then they just don't come and you're like, what ever did happen to you? Like, are you okay?
Every time I'm like, you died in a car wreck on the way here,
Yeah,
you know? Like,
can think of one person in particular where I like called him. I like could not get a hold, called him, texted him, emailed him, like,
yeah.
and it was for his kids. It was like a piece. So I'm like, what happened to you?
I want clients to know that if you miss or forget your appointment, don't never contact us out of shame. Please let us know you're
We think you
alive
died.
because we immediately go to that you died.
Do you have any people that you've worked with, either like in passing through traveling or on the day to day, that have like changed the way that you work?
Yeah. My friend Kim Doska, she owns the Holloway. studio with
Yeah.
Abby in East Austin. And I feel like you learn so much getting tattooed by other people. You know, there's little things. She has a lot of linear work like I do, very, very vertically linear. And so simple technical stuff, I can say that I've like learned a lot of stencil placement things from her. But I think just her process of being with people and her process of how she works and how she breaks up projects, and but also how she just like when she needs to eat and when I don't know, she's just a lovely human and she's inspired me in so many ways. And she's less, I mean, she works hard and maybe she feels rushed, but on the outside she doesn't seem like she's in a rush at all. And yeah, she likes a little she likes a little thing before we begin tattooing, and she's really good at kind of like marking time and intention. And also, oh yeah, that was something I was thinking of. She'll even go and change the music mid-session because she can feel like the vibe and arc of the tattoo process. And so she's very aware of that. And I think that's forgotten in a lot of places of how important sensory inputs are to the process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I have a client who can last so much longer if we have Incubus radio on in the shop.
That's so interesting.
We listen to Incubus every time she comes in.
So I can't make it without Incubus.
Yeah, but I'm here for it too. I'm gassed up on the Incubus radio as well. So let's do it. Yeah, but Kim does more like soundscapey. I mean, she does a lot of different stuff, but I think her soundscape is interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Did you have a moment that you were like, I made it, I'm a real freaking tattoo artist? And what was that like?
I finished my first back piece and it was nothing too crazy, but a lot of black fill. And when I finished that and it just healed solid, this is so cheesy, but I'll share it because let's be real. I like went in the bathroom at the end of the day and I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, fuck yeah, look at you go. I was like, any ounce of imposter syndrome gone. I was like, I fucking got this shit. Like, I ate that shit. Yeah.
That's a good story. That's a good moment. I think everybody deserves to have that.
Yeah. I think that earlier on in my career too, there was another moment where like a couple shops had reached out to me directly to see if I wanted to come guest. I was like, okay, I'm a tattooer and people want me to come tattoo places. This is nice.
Best case scenario.
Yeah. Yeah, but the back piece is the real kicker.
I love that for you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Who or what is inspiring you right
now? I went to the local tat book store and got some good stuff. Is it weird if I actually go get the book because I want to see the person's name?
You can go get it. I can cut it.
Okay.
Yeah, you can go get it.
Okay, great. I'm gonna grab it real quick. I'm really inspired by Squid Ink. They're kind of big on Instagram, but they have really cool texture combinations and gray and black combinations that are, I can see their unique own style in it, and it's not like old school. Yeah, basically.
Like
they're doing new stuff.
You're like, I think that they did that.
Yeah, and I'm like zooming in on that shit, looking at the contrast and textures and everything in there. Super awesome. The other person who's inspiring me right now is Sam Rivers. They are also kind of big on Instagram, but I didn't find them on there. I actually found their book first, and they do black work, ornamental bodysuits and stuff. And they just have like a really wide variety of shape combinations, and I have the book here. Check out this one.
Whoa, yeah, I could see
so rad
inspiration from that.
Yeah, so I got this book.
It's a cool, it's a pretty book. It's like a coffee table book.
It's beautiful. I know, it's gorgeous. It's called Black Mark.
Did you just go to Belzelle and then you were like, I'm looking for something like this, and then she picked it for you?
No, I know Lauren's already been on the podcast. I went with Lauren and we did, I think she mentioned on the podcast that we just grabbed everything and she was like, put some shit back.
You don't need all this.
Yeah, but she has it organized by style in there, and so I just really looked through everything. We spent a while in there. It's a great place. Yeah.
I want to go.
I think that's really it on the inspo.
Yeah. Let me make sure if I want to go to Belzelle so bad. I want to go get a book.
It's out there.
Do you have to make an appointment? to do that?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. As we're kind of getting close to the end, is there anything that you want to, like a note you want to leave behind or something, a point you want to make, something you want to tell people?
Really, I think I'm leaving this conversation with a lot of remembering how blessed I am to be in such a awesome shop and go guest in awesome shops. And so just a reminder out there to people that you have autonomy and you can use your voice, tattooers included. Be yourself, babes.
Yeah. Yeah. What is something that you're working on right now that you're excited about, or an upcoming project?
I'm finally getting together the large scale concept page on my website. So that'll be up. I'm really excited for that to be Googleable, And then I'm working on a full sleeve that is going from I've really only done full sleeves like from the shoulder down. This one is from the chest, like pec all the way down to the fingertips. It's kind of crazy, and we did the elbow piece recently and I love it. So if you follow me on places where you can see my work, keep an eye out for that soon, because I have not released anything of it yet.
I think I saw you doing that consult. Kind of a
probably
taller guy.
Yeah, he's like 6 something, which I traced his arm, because when people come in for consults, I trace their arm, and then I held it up. I was like, oh,
it's a lot of skin.
That's a lot of skin. Yeah, I feel like I have a lot of clients who are like my height or shorter. I'm 5'6". That's very different than over 6 feet.
No, yeah, it's easy to forget, like, people like that. It's like a lot of body to cover. So something that would look small on them would be somebody else's, like, forearm piece.
Yeah. Yeah, to go back and re-quote him. I was like, my usual sleeve thing is da-da-da. And then I was like, actually, you might want to add a couple extra days. Because you're tall and we're coming onto your chest, so.
Yeah, that's true. It's also more body coverage as well. It's not just like a normal arm. That's awesome. Well, where can people find you and support you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Sappy Tattoo, SAPPY tattoo. And you can also find my website, which is just sappytattoo.com.
Awesome. Well, I hope you have an awesome day. Are you tattooing today?
I am. Yeah, later this afternoon.
Hell yeah. Well, have fun. Good luck. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I appreciate you. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Today's episode was completely edited, recorded, and produced by Kale Pearson. The music was mixed and edited by Dominic Gopal. You can find us on social media at Breaking Skin Pod. For more information, check out our website, breakingskinpod.com. You can find my social media at kale.tattoos. That's spelled Kail. To check out more of my work, visit kaletattoos.com. For more information on today's guest, you can find their social media in the show notes. Please come hang out every Monday morning at 6 a.m. Central Time for another episode of the Breaking Skin Pod. Thank you all for listening and hanging out. We really appreciate the support. Can't wait to see you next week. Cheers.